Alright. Hi everybody. Here as promised. I'll just wait for you all to start hopping on. I am in my car. So I'm not going to be able to share this like I normally would from my laptop and the different pages and so on. So I'll just make sure that I share it later. But I'm here, as I said I would be, to read a little bit of my book. Because people have asked me, and I wanted to read a little bit of the book so you can hear a little bit about my true story and what's led us to where we are today. So welcome, share, and would you guys do some watch parties? If you do some watch parties, that'll help us, right? Because you know that David, myself, and several other people, Sandra and others, have been shadow banned, and it's kicking back up again, but it's definitely not like where it was before. So the way we can help this is that when you see somebody on, like I have several pages. So like, for example, when David's on, I share it with the different pages, and I watch party them at the same time. So it starts getting the attention back up. Another thing you guys can do is you can hit see first, even if you've hit see first before. Now I'll give you an example. I only see your stuff, David. I see you on 26 hours later, even though I have it set at see first. It's insane. I have to actually go looking for stuff. And I do get a ton of notifications, so it makes it more difficult for me. But that's some of the ways you can help with these shadow bans, okay? A lot of people are getting this now. Facebook has been messing with a lot of people because the truth is out there. And what's really cool, and the reason I wanted to read this, so several reasons I want to read this, is because people have been asking me. This is a true story. A sequel will be coming out. I'm working with other companies with regards, because I always worked in film TV with regards to putting this into a movie. But I want to read it so that you guys can relate to it, and also because of how far we've come. And I think it's very encouraging to see how far we've all come in this, with everything, and also to see like where I was in the midst of this. Hi everybody, I see you guys coming on. Where I was in the midst of this situation, and there are some situations that are so horrendous. They're just so absolutely terrible, and what's going on to so many children in our country and so on. But at the same time, I am government whistleblower, but I'm a whistleblower. So what happens is with somebody like me, when I was specifically going after judges, like I am now, but specific judges, and one of them was on my quote-unquote case when I was going after him, Anthony McGinty. It's no secret. And so any normal judge would have recused. They would have been off the case. His name is in the book, okay? And a decent human being of any kind of ethics, any kind of integrity, even like some of the politicians in the local area that know him and that are friends with him, said it is improprietory, I think that's what they call it, and it is absolutely wrong that he would stay on that case. It makes him look very bad, especially that I'm in the public eye the way I am, and like, it's just crazy. So I feel like by reading what I'm going to read to you guys tonight, so gather around, kids, as I read this story to you guys. Get your popcorn, get on your couch and get nice and cozy. If you're in New York, you're freezing, I'm sure. So get your fireplace going, whatever. And I'm going to read. And I think it's going to be very encouraging to so many of you, because mine was literally an impossible case, because you have to understand, I filed over 70 cases of families. Many of you watch me still to this day, and I filed your cases with the district attorney, and I started out with the local sheriff's department. And one of the women, she just like flipped out and lost her mind. So she kind of went off into troll land. But the rest of the people are still very faithful followers and working very hard to take the system down. And so I often wondered if that one particular woman was kind of set in, like a lot of stuff that we see today. But the reason I'm telling you this is because, like, my situation was almost a full 8 months. It was like 7.5 months. Now, don't get me wrong. My situation, my son is 12, so it's still a fight to keep him protected. Okay, so it's been 12 years worth. But when the story was happening, my son was 9. Okay, so I had him back at 9, and then he had his 10th and 11th and now 12th birthday home. Thank God. Thank God. But I've been still fighting for everybody else because I'm so passionate about this, and I'm so blown away by what goes on in our country. Hold on, it's okay. People can be out there. They're allowed to be out there. It's okay. Oh my God, this guy just literally jumped a fence and landed on his butt. And so it's okay, Lily. It's okay. No. It's okay. People can be out there. People can be out there. Hold on a second. It's okay. My son is at the skate park. Hey, you want to say hi? Shh, you want to say hi? Want to say hi? See that? You want to say hi? All right. Shh. Okay. Shh. We're going to read a story now, okay? Shh. So I'm going to read you from where my story started once the dog starts barking. And I'm going to read into it a couple of chapters. And I feel like another part when that I felt like the timing was very important. At one point, I did read a section mid-book, but I do really, I do encourage you guys to get this because just so you know, first of all, you first have to get a publicist to get a book, and you have to get approved. Then you have to pay out a lot of money, okay? Because there's proofreading and attorneys and all this other stuff. So to make this book, it was $20,000. I know people make books and stuff, and they do certain things out there, or they make their own copies and do stuff like that. They own the rights. In other words, Amazon, where it sells from, they get their cut, and then the publicist gets their cut. So whatever's left over, it doesn't even come close to what I've invested. Not even come close, guys. The point is to get the truth out and get the story out, and to get encouragement for other people. But at the same time, whatever little bit comes, it's a check that comes every 4 months. That goes right back into Punish for Protecting. It goes right back into it. So I don't work a job any longer. I was making good money prior to all this, and I don't work a job. I obviously work harder than most people do in the course of a lifetime in a week, probably. This is very grueling, and I praise God because I know it's going to be all worth it long term. But let me go ahead and start reading. So it's Punished for Protecting the Injustice System of Family Court, and I have the emphasis on family court because CPS, foster care, which had nothing to do with foster care, had nothing to do with my son, forced adoption, what we see today with the contracts to the hospitals for medical kidnap, and all these other things that go on between the fraudulent court system that we have today. Our court system, and God bless all of you, I see your nice post, thank you guys. Our court system throughout our country it's very sad. It's in sorry shape, and it's very bad, and the only thing that I see for anybody to do is to please fight with me to abolish and arrest. We've got the state of New York in a very good place, and I'd like to see the rest of the country follow suit, because for the first time in history, we now currently have these judges and attorneys and CPS workers on New York Assembly public record. So anybody from New York, please, I put stuff on my Facebook pages. It's on YouTube as well. Please get them on public record, okay? And the patterns of abuses that they're causing families. There is no mistake. These are not mistakes. These are intentional decisions that these judges make. And we're going after obviously the whole lot, CPS and foster care and all of this throughout the nation. But when you take the head off of the family court, take it off the family court, you see a police officer knows, all right, that they cannot come into your house and go on your property. Did you know that even if you have a criminal felony warrant against you, they still can't come on your property and look for you? Okay? They can't do that. And they know that. Could you imagine? So anyway, my point is that if there's no warrant signed by a judge, they can't be there. CPS certainly can't be there. Okay? They have no authority whatsoever. So why am I telling you guys this? And please tag your friends and bring everybody in and bring everybody in so I can read. So I'm telling you this because they have no authority. Now, the family court is a fraudulent authority, but even under our screwed up system, the only authority that they do have is through the fraudulent family court, guys. The fraudulent family court, right? So, and here's something else that you guys should have done if you didn't already. Those of you in New York, CC me to the reports you're filing to the New York Assembly. There's 2 emails on my Facebook page and mine. Okay, so I can keep track of it because I'm trying to keep track of it, and I'm seeing how many are against specific judges, specific attorneys, and so on and so forth. Okay, but the point is that, and the point I'm trying to make is, when I start reading this, you're going to understand more. We need to abolish and arrest. I don't want to hear it. I don't care who you are. I don't care how long you've been doing this. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how many credentials are at the end of your name, letters at the end of your name. If you're not doing abolish arrest, I don't want to know about it, because I cannot see something that's supposed to be a justice system getting a pat on the back, a judge getting dismissed or have to retire, or getting disbarred. Who cares about that? Yes, it's going to affect their pocketbook. Not necessarily, though, because the judges, they're getting pensions and they're getting all kinds of stuff. That is not what they should be getting. Okay, and there is no logical way, and there is zero, that any of these judges didn't know what they were doing. They know darn well what they're doing. Okay, they know darn well that they're not just making mistakes. They are intentionally harming families. And here's something, but there are people, well, I'm going to read it. Let me read it. This is better. I'll just read it. So, punish for protecting the injustice system of family court. So thank you for inviting your friends. I dedicate this book to my son, Christian. Now, I have everybody's name in the book except for my son's dad's name is under Rick. Okay, I have several reasons why I did that. It's my true story, so I can use anybody's name I want, okay, legally. But I chose to do that. I have my own personal reasons. But it was in a relationship, and my son is the most amazing blessing on the planet, but that I was embarrassed of, okay? Embarrassed. And we've all made mistakes in life. We've all made those kinds of mistakes. Okay, so anyway, I dedicate this book to my son, Christian. He represents all the children of our country who are misplaced by judges. I will never stop fighting for him, and that is the absolute truth. And in that, I will never stop fighting for each and every child in this country and abroad. I'm not going to read through the acknowledgments, but I have some lovely people in my life and family. Okay? And I'm going to get into the first part, which is called motherhood. Dads, this is for you too. Fathers, this is for you too. It's very sad to see these wonderful dads that don't ever see their kids, but they pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month child support. And then you see these fathers that don't pay a dime, don't buy them shoes, don't buy them anything. And they have serious abuse issues. It's mind-blowing to me. Terrible. Okay, bad news and good news. I write these words so that my child and I can have a voice. Our story is true, and the truth must be told. Remember, the truth never changes either. The truth is that the family court system in the United States is broken. And boy, have we learned it's not broken, it was built this way. But this is what I knew when he was 9. For almost a decade, I have tried to protect my son while experiencing just how broken the system truly is. Most of us go through life believing that if we don't do anything wrong, we are safe, and so are our children. The bad news is that belief couldn't be farther from the truth. Our family courts across the country fail parents and their children. In fact, our constitutionally secure right to be a parent is violated daily by the entity called family court. When we witness someone struggling with child custody issues, we automatically assume they have done something wrong. This is a myth, a falsehood. I tell my truth to expose how procedural errors and abuse of power are used to manipulate the system and to harm innocent families. The bad news doesn't end there. Our privacy is being invaded. Our civil liberties trampled. Based on my experience, I'd say most officers of the court and in law enforcement know the system is broken. It's beyond broken, though. But they do nothing to correct it. They collect their paychecks and go home each week, knowing that countless children are being endangered by haphazard decisions. These decisions often cause emotional, physical, and sexual damage. We are a nation in crisis. Do you find it hard to believe that this happens? Or is this happening to you right now? I have been accused of kidnapping my own child. Now, I was never arrested for that, but it was an accusation because of a you'll understand further. But there are other mothers right now in jail and prison for quote-unquote kidnapping their own children when they were actually protecting them. We have been reported missing when we were not. My son and I have been traumatized by decisions made without considering evidence. Because of my experience, I became an advocate for families seeking to protect their rights and their children. In this role, I have heard countless stories of parents who were dealing first with a failed marriage or relationship and then experience further failure at the hands of the very courts designed to protect our families. My own lawyers were shocked by the number of articles and true stories that I shared with them. I don't believe they were shocked anymore now, but I did then. I have years of experience investigating how desperately damaging our system is. I believe it needs more than reform. It needs to be completely abolished. If you're with me, give me a heart. But there is good news too. There is hope. If you are struggling with injustices wrought by our courts, you are not alone. There are resources that will help you. There are advocates to stand with you. You are not crazy. If you know that you have been doing right for your child all along, do not stop believing that truth. It is your God-given right as a parent to protect your children, and we can stand together to make sure that happens. My story. Birth. I gave birth to my son Christian in October 2007. I had ended an unhealthy relationship with his father, whom I will call Rick. Rick had a history of addiction to drugs and alcohol and was violent towards me. Christian and I began the work of being a family on our own. Rick did not visit Christian or support him financially. Imagine my surprise months later when I received a court date in the mail. I was ordered to appear, because Rick had filed for full custody. I remember laughing to myself. I thought, yeah, right. First, Rick was a known drug addict and on perpetual probation from repeated arrests. He had been absent for months. That court awarded me full custody of Christian and gave supervised visits to Rick. I felt good about this decision and agreed it was the most logical and safest decision for my child and me. I had an order of protection against Rick due to his history of domestic violence, which we now know is actually supposed to be called abuse and battery, because domestic violence is a military term, but that's part of the falsity of the court. However, despite his pattern of arrest, drug use, and repeated protection order violations, he continued to take me to court. I do not exaggerate when I say that I was appearing in court about once a month, some months more than once. I was drowning in a flood of legal language and paperwork as my life turned upside down. How does this happen? I remember thinking that I shouldn't have gone to court in my entire lifetime as many times as I went during those first years after Rick filed. I was in a revolving door of court. I would show up in my suit and heels. Rick would appear in his dirty clothes from some landscaping job, hair tucked in a baseball cap. Month after month, we'd face off, but we wouldn't speak to each other. Month after month, I showed up, and the verdict was the same. I would drive Christian to supervised visits every week to a hole in the drug community in Kingston, New York. Week after week, things stayed the same until Christian was 18 months old. New verdict. What just happened? I asked myself. We went to court again, had a hearing again. Rick initiated the hearing. My lawyer told the judge that I was uncomfortable with the location of Rick's visits due to drug trafficking at that location. I suggested a park, a neutral location. Suddenly, I was standing outside court, being informed by my lawyer that Rick had unsupervised visits every other weekend. Now, they've changed it since then. Supervised visits are now done at parks and other locations. So why wasn't it just done like that for me? So they fix a problem, but then they mess up your case. Suddenly, I was standing outside court, being informed by my lawyer that Rick had unsupervised visits every other weekend. You agreed to it, my lawyer said. No, I didn't, I argued. I didn't say anything at all. Now, this was me then. This is not me now. How did that happen? I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't spoken a word in court once court began. I had tried to respect the court by keeping my mouth shut. That's not me anymore. I believed that court was like being pulled over by the police. The appropriate response was to keep your mouth shut. Boy, did I learn. Your attorney speaks for you, but mine hadn't spoken for me. He had given away my son to a violent drug-using man 4 days a month. I felt abused and invaded, and for the first time I was afraid. I walked out of court that day with a knot in my stomach, thinking that my son was going to be surrounded by an entire family of drug dealers and addicts. I didn't want to be there. I began my journey as Christian's mother with an absent father who didn't provide as much as a bottle of water for his care. Every item of clothing, piece of furniture, and ounce of food was provided by me. I was happy to give my child what he needed. I would never have chosen to fight domestic matters in a family court. I was naive and believed that if I had a good background and provided for my child, my parenting rights were safe. Never in a million years would I have thought that if I went before a judge, my child would be endangered. Yes, there I was. I went into court as a law-abiding citizen. Now I know better. National. And now was the fight of my life. I learned a new language, the language of court. I began to research and study. I was responsible for driving Christian 45 minutes each way. As I moved through these years of unsupervised visits, I tried to support my son every way I could. I sent groceries for the weekend visits to provide him with healthy food. Even though it was only 4 days a month, my healthy, happy child was suffering the effects of his time with Rick. Once he came home with bug bites all over his body. He began talking about beer at the age of 4. He also told me that he was sleeping in the same bed as his father and the new girlfriends. Yes, friends. Rick drove Christian around without a valid driver's license because he had lost his due to drunk driving. When my son was six, Rick spent time in jail for domestic violence and violation of orders of protection. We moved through years with me raising my concerns to a court that never took them seriously. I provided sole support of Christian. Rick still paid no child support. But I learned that domestic violence perpetrators will use the court system as part of their abuse. Sharing custody of a child often forces the victim to meet with the abuser, discuss a child's health or school, and keep in contact. Even though I did not have to talk to Rick, I still had to take Christian to visits and see Rick in court. It's sad that children are used by abusers in this way. It's even sadder that the courts not only allow it, but encourage the continual contact and exposure between parents. More court time means more income for lawyers, judges, and court personnel. It's shocking that this is true. I know I've had an unfortunate wealth of experience. From these experiences, I have learned about family court throughout our nation, and it is a constitutional anomaly in that it does not reflect the Constitution's purpose. Family court is one of the most corrupt places in the United States of America. It has endangered the lives of children and violently attacked families. Based on what I have seen, many judges are nothing less than abusers themselves. I advocate they should have mental health evaluations twice a year as they render decisions that often violates human rights. It is horrifying to me that these judges operate without any oversight. I entered Ulster County Family Court in New York as a law-abiding citizen. Believing in our justice system, I entered family court not knowing that I would someday be labeled a criminal. And I don't have a criminal record, by the way, but these are some of the accusations. My family. I came from a family who had never been in trouble. When I think of my grandparents, uncles, aunts, and even great-grandparents, not one of them has ever been arrested or in any sort of trouble, not even a parking ticket. That's the type of family we are. Business owners, pillars of the community, respected volunteers. In addition, most of the people I know have never been in trouble with the law. My 17-year-old niece at the time is an honor roll student who serves on the Board of Education for her high school. She's been accepted in every college where she applied. Her top priority in life is her grades. My sister, Tony, is a holistic practitioner and a nutrition expert. I have witnessed clients under her treatment heal from cancer. My mother volunteers for the fire department and the ladies' auxiliary. Now she is retired from the hospital. I have strived to maintain a strong work ethic and an excellent reputation. I am an unwavering advocate. I started my own foundation to help others with similar experiences. I see a need, I try to fill it. That's the kind of person I am. It is also part of my faith because I know there is hope despite the corruption that I've witnessed. And then there's my son, Christian, a highly intelligent, healthy, creative and gifted. He remained this way despite the setbacks he suffered during with his father. Every time I would pick him up after a visit, I began the hard work of reversing the damage done during his time with Rick. Every other weekend, month after month, that's the type of mother I am. So the decisions of custody should be simple, right? On the one hand is a father with a bad history, and on the other is a mother in good standing with the law and community. On the one hand is a man mandated to AA and NA, and on the other hand is a woman who is raising a healthy, happy child. Who would you choose? Family, faith. My family has faith and strong values. Through faith and values, though faith and values are being attacked in this country, mine have held strong. I thank God for the faith I have because I don't know how I would have gotten through this ordeal without it. My faith helped me and helps me help other people in similar places. I don't know how those without faith deal or function when they are in battles for their children, because this battle was beyond a nightmare. My child is from a home that is loving, caring, supportive, and safe. When I walked into the family court, none of that mattered. The safety and welfare of children should be the very thing taken into consideration. Dictate that that's exactly what they should be doing. A parent's right to the preservation of his relationship with his child derives from the fact that the parent's achievement of a rich and rewarding life is likely to depend significantly on his ability to participate in the rearing of his offspring. A child's corresponding right to protection from interference in this relationship derives from the psychic importance of him being raised by a loving, responsible, reliable adult. And this is Franz versus United States. And so I've quoted every law in this book, by the way, and in the back. And all of this is very helpful to anyone that's suffering through this crazy system. The reality. After Rick received unsupervised visits, I felt my power and rights begin to slip away. In family court, everyone is treated like dirt. No matter who you are, before the judge, any person can be treated as a criminal, while a person with a criminal history is treated humanely. Stepping into family court is like stepping into the twilight zone. In the rest of the world, I am liked and respected. I am treated civilly. But the moment I walked into court, I entered a barbarian world where rights disappear. Does anybody else feel like that? I was forced to lower myself down into the pit of hell. The people who work there see it day in and day out, yet most of them do nothing. They see injustice and a system that puts good people in bondage, and they simply collect their paycheck and go home. Nobody would believe this circus act. It's pre-decided when you walk in, like a performance. You expect the justice system, and you get a 3-ring circus. I don't know if anybody else can agree with that. And in this crazy world, good people can be labeled criminal. I have lived in this circus for 9 years and counting. That was at the time. Slavery and bondage. When I think of justice, I think of people like Rosa Parks sitting on a bus seat demanding her rights. I think of someone like Sojourner Truth, who in the 1800s was the first black woman who won from the white man. She won freedom for her children. In fact, they erected a statue to her right... Hold on one second. Okay. They erected a statue of her... hold on a minute. Pardon me. They erected a statue of her... I just lost my place. Right here in Ulster County, New York. Imagine having her as a role model in front of the court. I find it ironic that the court system is still enslaving people all these years later. One second. Come and get it. You're going to have to come and get it. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Okay. The years of the revolving door into court took their toll on me. I was not allowed to move to a different state. Think about that for a minute. How can anyone living in this free country think this is okay? Fortunately, I was allowed to travel out of state for work and go on vacations without having to ask permission. So if you have a child with somebody and the relationship fails, you are risking not being allowed to move to a different state for 18 years? Technically, you are on state arrest. It's like being in prison, being a slave. Being mandated to live in a state may limit your ability to better your life or the life of your child or children. You can't even enjoy the freedoms guaranteed by our Constitution. Neither judge I dealt with did the right thing. The first judge who presided over my case recused herself in 2016. Then I found myself under the thumb of Judge Anthony McGinty, who thankfully now is on public record with the news. Every distractor comes when I'm trying to do this. Hold on, I'm sorry. Okay. A judge who behaved as if he didn't like me and certainly didn't care about the welfare of my child. I couldn't grow, couldn't seek a better job in a different state. I was treated like a common criminal on probation. My entire existence was under the control of one judge. The stress was unbearable. Family court judges have too much power. They keep people down, so to speak, simply because they choose to do so. No matter who walks into court, whether they be a great law-abiding families or not, they are all treated at a judge's discretion. This is a form of slavery and bondage. This slavery extends to people who are educated and people who have financial means. It extends to people who are assets to their community with a lot to offer their children and everyone else. For years, people have accepted this imposed slavery. Now, people with businesses find themselves slaves, as do people with master's degrees. Even Police officers have told me they are treated badly despite their uniform and service. My only crime was protecting my child since the court would not. Imagine, if you will, going to court once a month for 9 years to no avail. I walked in with a new police report. I walked out without a change. Rick did jail time. Nothing changed. My record remained clean. Under my care, Christian was happy with an impeccable health record from his pediatrician and holistic health practitioner. He had stability at home. Rick never completed a domestic violence course or anger management. He threatened me during pickups and drop-offs, but there was no consequences, ever. He bought and used drugs. When he got into trouble, I put it in writing. Nothing happened. Nothing. Yet, I was still moving through the corrupted system, trying to make things work for the sake of my son. I was taking him to his visits and repairing the damage. I was screaming, "Help me protect my son." I was ignored. Does anybody else feel like that? I'd like to see your comments if you feel like that, if you through it. But this book has a very happy ending, and obviously, as you guys know, we are still going strong, trying to abolish and arrest. We want to abolish the system and arrest these judges for this tyrannical acts. There's more. There's symptoms of abuse. Matter of fact, you know what? I think I'm going to read a little more for you guys. I'm going to read part 2. I think it's important that you guys hear this. So, the stakes rise. And by the way, you can get this on Amazon.com, and if you have Kindle, you can read it for free. If you want a hard copy, it's only $15.99, and I'll be really happy to sign them for you guys. That can be worked out. I can explain how to do that. The stakes rise. Unsupervised visits. I walked a tightrope for the next years, balancing Christian's well-being with the court's demands. He remained a basically happy, healthy boy as he entered kindergarten and first grade. So this is where I studied all the social science research, like ACEs, and I had an expert come into the court and all the effects and what it does to our children. And this is what gets me the most, is that what I see as an advocate all over this nation, our children are being so damaged by this court system. They're being damaged by the court system, and the court system is actually creating rebellious children. It's creating children on drugs. It's creating children that are not becoming all that they should be. And it's very sad. And if we don't get rid of the system, we have a big mess on our hands. And that's what I've been preaching for 3 years? 12 years doing this, but 3 years like on social media. So basically, he remained a basically happy, healthy boy as he entered kindergarten and first grade. Then he began to experience trouble at school. He had always been smart and well-behaved. Now he was described as hyperactive in the classroom and prone to outbursts. The new court-appointed attorney for Christian, Amy Ingram, brother, and sorry, people are calling and calling. I have a granddaughter, and this never happened with her. She was well-behaved until she was married. I never had an issue with her. So it goes to show you, how can the same mother raise children and have one that has an issue, and the one that has the issue only has it because of what was happening? It's very clear and obvious. But anyway, the newly appointed attorney for Christian was Amy Ingram. She's also on public record with the New York State Assembly, so you can see her patterns of abuse, which I know very well, because I advocate for almost every single one of her victims. Whoever children she gets, I feel so bad for her. Okay, this is my life, by the way. Okay. So was coming to see him at school, and he was being pressured into saying bad things about me. You guys are familiar with that, when abusive parents do that to their children. He purposely peed on the toilet. This is something that he would do. He told me about it when he was younger. He punched another child. Suddenly, I was often at school. I talked with his teachers, his counselors, his principal. You should only know what it's cost me for private school and tutoring to make his grades get better and stuff from all this abuse that they've put us through. His behaviors followed a predictable pattern. He would go visit his father and then act out in school for several days. I would work with him to bring him back into balance, and then he would return to his dad. So I'd see the pattern, and then like the week off that he had, he'd be balanced and normal again. But then eventually, as the years passed, it just became worse and worse and heavier and heavier. The school staff would walk a fine line, trying not to take sides. They saw the disruption caused by visits with his father, but refused to get involved. They sat on the sidelines while my son was demonstrating the long-term effects, but that's definitely changed now, by the way, but they're very much involved now, which is good, of being exposed to Rick's addictions and manipulations. They kept the peace at the expense of my son. Christian was not old enough to speak to the court. The child attorney lied about his wishes and worked with Rick to manipulate him. He would come home crying and tell me that he felt he had to say what they wanted, but he didn't mean it. During this time, we went back to trial for a year and a half. Yes, a year and a half trial. That's right, we were in a custody trial for 18 months. At the end of that trial, nothing changed. I retained custody and Rick was granted unsupervised visits every other weekend. Christian began to get suspended from school. I was forced to leave my job repeatedly to pick him up or speak with staff. Rick and his girlfriend, at the time it was a paramour, and if you want to look up the word paramour, that's what's in the legal definition. At that time, he's had many girlfriends, many in the past 12 years. A paramour is like someone who's still married, and it's like a lover, a secret lover. And so that's how the attorneys put it in writing. I was pretty shocked they put it like that. But I was forced to leave my job repeatedly to pick him up or speak with staff. Rick and his girlfriend called Child Protective Services, CPS, to report imaginary problems with me. They harassed me all the time. I took Christian to a therapist. He would cry because they wanted him to talk badly about his mother. When a child is placed in harm's way, they can develop post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which is actually now PTSS, because they took out they changed the diagnosis from post-traumatic stress disorder, and they changed it to post-traumatic stress syndrome, because it is actually not a disorder. It is caused by trauma, so it's an injury. So PTSD, they said. They can experience this disorder at the same level as combat veterans. Children in this circumstance suffer continuous anxiety and fear. Often their primary caretakers are taken from them, leaving them without the one person who alleviates their fears. And I know so many of you are dealing with that because I work with you. Then children must answer to strangers who are part of the court system. They are constantly questioned, often being coached on what to say to be a good child. All this adds to their stress and damages their psyche. These children need to be placed back with the people who can heal them, not placed with a dysfunctional parent in a dangerous environment. I knew my son was suffering PTSD and needed protection from its source, the people who were supposed to protect him and uphold the law. I realized that my son was in true jeopardy. My happy boy was suffering and becoming someone else in front of my eyes. The stress was unbearable. I needed to support him financially, but I was devastated that he was being labeled a bully when I knew he was not. Not at all. I quit my job and pulled Christian out of public school. I began to homeschool him, away from the public institution. He was not available to counselors or attorneys during the day. He began to heal. Then I discovered that Rick's brother was dealing heroin, and his brother just actually died of an overdose a couple weeks ago. So he was caught selling to an undercover cop. I stopped visits altogether because the brother was often at Rick's residence. I went to another court in Orange County and spent 4 hours getting an order of protection finally for my son. I felt like I was taking my power back. I had taken proof of my concerns to McGinty's court and was ignored. I knew I had the right to protect him. I knew right from wrong. The opposite of normal. I believe that most healthy parents have an inherent conscience built inside of them to protect their children. It comes naturally. Family court is the extreme opposite of that. It is, I believe, a diabolical institution. For years, it has operated in a wicked manner, answering to no one. Protective mothers suffer tremendously. These courts and their officials harm innocent people, innocent children. I saw it firsthand. I suffered it firsthand. Perhaps the root cause is the breakdown of the family in our society. Whatever the cause, the injustice system is the extreme opposite of normal. A reasonable, decent human being would work to protect a child, to protect the rights of individuals. They do not. They do the opposite. They violate us at their whim, discarding our laws at federal, state, and local level. They violate everything that is human. This court system polices itself, and they are bullies. It is their way to control people and to generate their own incomes. There are no juries in family court. There are no cameras. I've sat in many hearings and trials and watched them lead people to believe that they don't have any rights. You may be led to believe that you don't have any rights. You have rights. A parent's right to care and companionship of his or her children are so fundamental as to be guaranteed protection under the First, 9th, and 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Your rights are guaranteed. Our Supreme Court integrates and protects family court laws, and they are non-negotiable. God-given law. The laws of God are the foundation of who we are as human beings. These laws are found within our country's laws, within our Constitution. They are part of our inalienable rights as human beings, to parent and protect. We are also entitled to the same protection for ourselves. These principles are also found in our health and safety laws. In fact, these basic laws of God for humanity are found in everything we hold dear as a nation. Since the days of our founding fathers, these laws have governed our lands. These laws have ensured our freedoms and rights, which we, as a country, have fought to defend. What these judges do in family court is an utter violation of those laws. They are not legally allowed to take children from people who are fit parents. They are required to follow a due process of law, a trial based on evidence, not opinion. They don't even consider evidence. Instead, they do whatever they want. For years, I provided evidence of Rick's failures as a parent and as a citizen. My evidence was ignored. My civil liberties were denied. When this judge refused to consider the truth in evidence, that was brought into court. The Declaration of Independence clearly states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, the consent of us. These courts have flipped the intention of the U.S. Constitution. It was the purpose of this new government to ensure the governments, and therefore judges, derive their powers from the citizens, not the other way around. When these judges act without oversight, when they answer to no one, our rights to pursue a happy life for ourselves and our children are abandoned. It is up to us to correct this corruption. When any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter it or abolish it. And that's where we are today, my friends. Rights, therefore, come from God. They are inalienable. And the purpose of government is to secure the rights that God gave us. And when government takes our God-given rights, it is time to throw off such government. The growing concern. In the early years of my court battles, the severity of the violations didn't register with me. By the time I had reached this point of pulling Christian out of public school and away from the court's abuses, it was clear that God demanded I protect my child. If you were taking your child to a babysitter or daycare and they came home talking about drinking alcohol, would you send them back to that daycare? Would you allow your first grader to sleep in the same bed with his father and a girlfriend? I knew these events were serious. I could not allow them to continue. In my mind, I went back and forth. Why are they ignoring his arrests? Why won't they consider his continued drug abuse? Then one day a friend called me and told me that Rick was driving around with Christian. I didn't understand her point. He is driving around with your son. You know this. You know this? She said. What are you talking about? I replied. He's had multiple DWIs convictions and has no license. That's what I'm talking about, she said. She was correct. Rick was driving him to pick him up and drop him off. A 45-minute trip. I brought this event before the judge, and Rick admitted to it. When the judge asked Rick how he got to court that day, Rick admitted he drove. The judge did nothing except put in the order that Christian was to have a licensed driver for pickups and drop-offs. I sat there baffled. I was astonished. Is that how you handle his admission? I was stunned. On the one hand, I knew Christian would be in the car with a licensed driver, and I would get to see their license. On the other, another illegal activity by Rick was simply ignored. Hold on 1 second. Go straight back here. Okay, I'm actually gonna stop now. If you guys want to read the rest of this book, it's on Amazon and you can see it on Kindle. You can read the rest. It's really good. You can probably read it in an hour. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope that helped you. You can also get it on Amazon.com for an actual copy. And you may be able to get it for free if you already have Kindle. So you may be able to get it for free and read the rest of it this evening. Let me know what you think. And God bless each and every one of you. Bye now.